public comment card online or in person prior to the meeting. Once recognized by the board president, speakers should come to the podium introducing themselves for the record before addressing the board. Comments are limited to 3 minutes per speaker per topic unless modified by the board, and 20 minutes per topic unless the time is extended by the board president. Although no action shall be taken by the board on any item not listed on the agenda, the board may briefly respond to statements made or questions posed. Additionally, a board or staff member may ask a question or clarification. If a member of the community wishes to distribute materials to the board, they will give the materials to the board clerk for distribution. We may disagree, but we will be respectful of each other. All comments will be directed to the issue at hand and addressed to the school board. Personal attacks are not acceptable. School board meetings are working meetings. Our meetings are intended to be safe and welcoming to the community, while also serving the needs and priorities of the school district. We will listen to all the comments and points of view with respect. We will treat each other and members of the public with respect and consideration, regardless of differences in background, opinions, values, beliefs, race, age, identity, or language. All members of the public are expected to demonstrate the same respect. All members of the public are expected to demonstrate the same respect and civility toward the board as each other. Sidebar or distracting audience conversations will be moved outside. The board must be able to conduct its business on behalf of the district. For Government Code, Section 54953.5, members of the audience wish to film during the meeting and must go to the back or side of the audience as so to not block or interfere or otherwise disrupt participation in the execution of the business of the meeting. And as stated previously, we are recording and streaming. Public comment items on the agenda. First one I have named to be called upon is Sean Ghetto, gangster, dime bag dealer.
Madam Chair. Madam Chair. Honorable members of the board. Preston. Thank you for your time. I'm here tonight to comment publicly about Preston Addison's recall. Preston, in his defense, has stated that the reasons for recall amounts to that of defamation. I'm looking to Preston to perhaps explain what defamation is. If perhaps it's this post of yours on your personal Facebook page. If I could, please. Mark Lynn, I trust a girlfriend of yours, posted the following on the Community of Cloverdale Facebook page. The moderators immediately removed it because it is factual. Please, feel free to share this. Again, this is personal. This is social media Facebook page. This post, which unfortunately Mr. Addison is wrong, remains on the community page of Cloverdale to this day, refers to me as a dime bag dealing gangster ghetto thug who drives around in a war wagon. Mr. Addison supports that on social media in our community. My point being is perhaps Mr. Addison's personal affairs are interfering with the business of the school district and of this board. If you would, please, you might consider asking Mr. Addison to step down or resign. I'm absolutely amazed. My issue with this man dates back 4 years. I left him behind a long time ago. For him in his only defense to be to attack me rather than to address the concerns of parents, this community and their issues. This ain't about me. This is about moms. They're after you, not me, Mr. Addison. I do look forward, though, to continuing this conversation when you're no longer on the board, as does my attorney. I'm also looking forward to continuing to help Angela reveal vital information about your previous position as chair of this school board and your involvement at the Ice House. She found a lot of vital information. What she's lacking, though, are pictures. Pictures of your marijuana garden that were taken on the very same night that Angela's running that loop on Facebook. I have no interest in cannabis. None of my businesses will have any cannabis. Your name's all over the owner consent. You lied your whole way through that and used your influence in this community to get away with it. And finally, I get a chance to come up and tell the truth without being terrified of you. Your false police reports that you never made. Your PRA requests that you never fulfilled. I had to get those rotten emails that you wrote about me and my family from the city council. I did a PRA public records request of you and the district, and you didn't return those emails you sent. Thank you for your time. I'll see you next month.
Next, public comment on the agenda. If you need to be called upon, it will be recorded.
Good evening. I sent another detailed PRA request. Well, I can use my phone, and don't interrupt me. It's public comment. Thank you. You haven't responded. I know that you have 10 days. Your attorney, Jennifer Nix, might want to take up another career. Clearly, she doesn't understand the law, since she violated my rights with her pathetic attempt to silence me on behalf of Betha McLean. That was a joke. This is the reason I will be filing a lawsuit. I am transparent. I haven't decided yet if I'll sue Cloverdale Unified District or just Betha and Nix themselves as individuals. I'll be seeking my attorney fees and any all other damages that will be applicable. Just to be transparent with all of you, it's coming. If Luchetti was so wrong, then why did you pay him out? Why did you push for a settlement? I know in my career, we would never offer a settlement to the guilty. It doesn't sound like a man of guilt. It sounds like a vindictive board. You have all had your hand and your part in this unnecessary turmoil and drama, and each and every one of you deserve the same in return. Would you like to discuss my investigation with Cloverdale Police Department and how fast that went south? The false allegations. The truth will be exposed to our community once that report is done. The allegations, the lies, the sick corruption was disgusting, and having to have my family subjected to that was very horrible for my child. Another witch hunt in an attempt to destroy a man's life, and instead it failed terribly, and thankfully for him it did. Preston, you say you care about the district, and I believe that. The hundreds of signatures further prove that this community doesn't want you representing them, and more so as McLean. They don't want McLean representing the school district. Prove how much you care by resigning. I do thank you personally for the few good things you've done, but it's time for change. You've had a long reign, and it's appreciated and doesn't go unnoticed. But let's set your ego aside and do what's best for the district and resign. Take McLean with you.
Next, not on the agenda, public comment item, need to be called upon is Renee Tierney.
Hi, I'm Renee Tierney. I was a teacher in the district for 36 years and worked under 7 different principals in my career, 8 different superintendents. I'm here because special education is so important to me. It was where most of my career was spent, was in special education. I did 4 years of first grade, 23 years of RSP, Resource Specialist Program, 5 years of full inclusion where we won awards, 5 years of reading recovery and early literacy groups, 4 years of special ed director, and 5 years of STC mild and moderate class. So I have a pretty good handle on special education, and my husband was the school psychologist for the district, so I have a broad range of information. I'm just concerned. I've been trying to get an appointment with Stephanie Alexander to find out about what I just heard. Patty did a great presentation on bringing special ed preschool kids back to the district. I was appalled when I read during COVID that you were disbanding that program because everybody worked so hard to get them here. It's like $15,000 each to transport them, and that was 12 years ago when I was working. So I don't know what it is now, but you lose the ADA, you lose the you have to pay for the program they're in, you have to pay for the busing. That never should have ended. I don't care if there were 3 kids in the class, it would still be more economical. You let the special ed teachers go, at least 2 of them from what I understand. It's very hard to find people with a credential. I don't know how you're going to find one. And my big concern about the preschool is that if you're going to pull those special ed kids back into your regular ed preschool, you darn well better have a special ed teacher in that class, and don't do it until you do, because they have IEPs. Who's going to do the IEPs? Who's going to oversee the program, and who's going to understand the curriculum that those children need? They're very needy if they're 3 and they're already in special ed. So that's just a little aside, and when I talk to Stephanie, maybe I'll learn more, and maybe I'm totally wrong and everything's going the right way, but I'm going to be watching that because I care about those kids. They've been the children that I've had experience with my whole life. The other thing I wanted to bring up is that because I've taught for so long, I've been to many school board meetings, and I'm happy you're filming because now you have your tables turned so that you can see people. I was appalled when I came and you were facing each other. I was also appalled at the eye rolling. I was appalled at the mothers that got up and were crying at one of the meetings I was at, and people didn't even look at them. You're all looking at me, which is really nice, and I think it has to do with the cameras being on you, so that's great. Because you were looking down or you were looking at the timer, and you weren't. Three or four times I asked at that one meeting to please pull your mics closer because we couldn't hear you, and you all ignored me. I've never experienced a school board like this in my life, and like I said, I've been around a long time. It's very concerning to me, and I voted for every one of you. I guess my time's up. But
thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
If I may comment.
So in order to pay for a separate special ed preschool, we need at least 6 students, but our goal is not to have a separate special ed classroom, it's to have a full inclusion preschool. So it is not to send kids elsewhere, and currently we do have a teacher we're working with who oversees the students' IEPs and a highly trained paraprofessional serves the students who are in that program. So our goal is to serve those students locally. We do not want to send them elsewhere.
Can I say anything back?
No, I just to clarify Ms. Thomas, welcome to come back, but we do have, in terms of the cost benefit analysis, it's 6 students to fund it. So we're doing it anyhow because we feel it's the right thing for students, and we want our preschoolers to be exposed to the full campus. But I just wanted to touch on cost and also what we're working on now. I don't see any other public comment items not on the agenda. Closed session, reportable action taken. So during a closed session, the board took action under public employment, certificated classified management. They approved Jefferson School instructional aid increased to in hours from 3 hours a day to 6.5 hours a day. The Jefferson School instructional aid increased in hours from 3 hours a day to 5 hours a day. 2-hour-a-day Jefferson student services, student supervision, 2.5-hour-a-day Jefferson school service assistant, and lastly, a 6.2-hour-a-day Washington school paraprofessional too. And executive assistant Dean has that information as well. District Spotlight. Overall High School Associated Student Body.
Good evening, President Garrison, members of the board, Superintendent McLean.
I'm feeling really short right now. It's okay. This is
We're taking this opportunity. We're going to take this opportunity to really celebrate our ASB and senior class. They have done such a tremendous job of really building spirit at the school and including some more activities this year, things that maybe the school hadn't done. And so I just really wanted them to have the opportunity to brag on themselves and brag about the school. So with that, I'm going to present with you Guadalupe Nunez, our ASB president, and Agnes Nagurdi, our senior class president. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to them, and then before you guys leave, we'll say one more thing, okay?
Kathleen, did she receive our slideshow? At Guadalupe Nunez, and it's a school email. It should just be titled ASB presentation.
While we're waiting, I just wanted to give our seniors a little token of our appreciation for all you do. A little keychain that says 2023 and a little carabiner for you that says Eagles. And then I know your ASB advisor is here, and I have a little gift for Ms. Wilkerson as well. So if Ms. Wilkerson, you could come up. We all know that their work and your work go hand in hand.
Well, thank you very much. I couldn't be prouder of these students. Take it away.
All right, so what we have accomplished in ASB this year so far, and as said, I'm this year's ASB president, Guadalupe Nunez, and I'm joined with our senior class president, Ajus Nargudi. Next slide, please. Oh, so.
So starting off the year, we were able to plan a senior sunrise, which is kind of a tradition here. Even though it was cloudy, we still had a great outturn of about 60 students, and everyone had a really good time. And then in the other picture, you can see where we had our orientation, and everyone was able to come, learn about the clubs and the activities and stuff we do at school, get their schedules, and kind of get used to coming back to the high school.
Next up, we have something that has been in the works by classes for many, many years, and we thank the school board for being able to finally approve this and helping us raise money for a wonderful school and being able to do more. We did our parking lot painting fundraiser. ASB helped in the ways we could by having Ace Hardware offer coupons to help students with paint once they had bought their spots, and then additionally we also primed all the spots before students were able to come in and make their own design. And again, I just want to say thank you so much for the opportunity to be able to do that fundraiser. And we have a little video of us painting the day before. Are we going to play that video? Yeah. I think you have to explain it, yeah. Well, there was sound to it, but there you can see us all putting in the work, rolling, and it took a few hours, but it was well worth it, and everybody had a nice clean slate where they were able to paint their own personal designs.
There we go. So then we had our homecoming parade. We got I think 6 or 7 floats. We had one for each class. Then the cheerleaders, the football players, and the Cloverdale FFA. I think everyone had a great time, and it was a great experience getting to build these with our peers. And then we had a great outturn from the community coming down to watch the floats go by and the parades, and went to the community rally afterwards.
Additionally, we also had our homecoming game, which was on Friday, where the football team was victorious, and additionally, we were able to be joined by last year's royalty to crown this year's royalty. Unfortunately, we had a little bit of a sound problem, but it's all good. We're learning from that and progressing, and that was a great turnout as well.
Kind of go hand in hand with that, with homecoming, is we have the football games. We'd like to thank our underclassmen in ASB that come and decorate, like you can see in one of the pictures, and they really help make everything look nice, so everyone's really spirited when they get there. Then we have our student section, where we have many students come support our football team. Even in that middle one is an away game where you still see we have a great group.
Additionally, Spirit Days are something that we have seen all throughout the years, and we have continued this tradition of Spirit Weeks. There we have some of our most popular Spirit Days, such as Tie-Dye or Tropical Day, where students are able to participate, and it's a fun way to have everybody be incorporated and have the ability to feel a part of the school and just build that sense of community. And then we also have our rallies, which have been a lot of fun. This is something that we were not able to do during COVID through Zoom, so being able to finally do these once again, and also not being so worried about being indoors with COVID, it's been really great to have this experience once again. Here is a photo of myself with my co-host Ryan. He's our activities director for ASB, and we love to direct the games and act like little mini game show hosts, and it's a lot of fun for everybody. We get participants from the crowd, and get people who we wouldn't think to involve, and because they're able to volunteer and say, you know what, I want a chance to present myself in front of the school, and it's a really great way for them to come out of their comfort spots as well. And then there's another little video. It was a surprise dance by our teachers, which we had no idea. They kept it very well under wraps. The only person who did know was our DJ, and other than that, we were completely taken away. So we'd like to thank our teachers for that nice little surprise. It's always nice.
Then in the classroom, now that we're on the block schedule, and you guys made it possible for us to have 8 periods, so that gives us one of them for leadership. During that time, we'll be able to do stuff like make posters, have meetings, and brainstorm ideas for what we can do going forward in the year. And also, it gives us a chance to really develop our leadership skills, where we normally wouldn't have an opportunity to do that before this year.
In the past, we were never able to have a leadership class due to scheduling and just the way our courses were set up. And having this class has really been a lot of help. We couldn't have imagined planning out all of homecoming, especially because it was earlier on in the year. So having this class just gives you that additional time. And like I just said, not only are we able to work on just, for example, making posters for the school, but we also have actual curriculum where we're taught all about being leaders and how certain traits help you further yourself in life, and how you can be a leader in your community as well as in school. And lastly, we just want to let everybody know that CHS High School does have an Instagram. It's chs.eagles. This is a great place for parents, students, everybody to get to see what students are up to. Photos such as FFA or cross country going on an away game. Some videos from like rallies, Spirit Days, upcoming games, and it's really great for staying in the loop and being able to, for parents being able to see their students at school. So that's also something we wanted to mention, in case anybody didn't know. And thank you.
And I just want to note that this is not the end. They have come and spoke. That's right, we're on video now. This is not the end. They have come to me. They've been really communicative this year, meeting, planning out the pep rallies, and talking about their ideas for the coming year, for the rest of the year, and how do they involve more students. So like the idea of a MORP, which is the non-prom, and things like that. So I really feel like this ASB has just been a light in trying to include as many students as possible. So I just wanted to say thank you.
Consent calendar. Addison, motion to approve J1, J2, J4, J9. Trustee Addison seconded. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? And no one is absent.
You got it flopped.
Sorry, trustee. Actual motion.
No. Trustee
I wrote it right. I just read it wrong. So trustee Addison motion, trustee Axel seconded. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? No one is absent. J3.
Once again, I just wanted to publicly state thank you for all of the donations. Here, Black Bud Giving Fund and HMA donated $104 to Jefferson School. CNK Market Incorporated donated $19.91 to Jefferson School. Angela Cordova Community donated 80 Jefferson t-shirts for students valued $1,100. And then Stephanie Bearded donated $100 to the Cloverdale High School. So we appreciate and thank everyone for their donations. With that, I would like to move to approve J3.
Second. Trustee Mendoza Torres, motion to approve acceptance of donation. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? And no one is absent. Report. Our student body members are not here. So we will move to to King Ramirez, which was Mr. Ramirez who came, and it was really cute. So I appreciate her inviting us all. I'm sure I'm forgetting something else I did over the month, but that's it for now. That's all. Okay.
So I attended MIG 1. I'm going for round 2 of doing MIG. So I attended MIG 1 and as well as MIG 3. I'm kind of doing them out of order. MIG 1 was Foundations of Effective Governance and Setting Direction, and MIG 3 is Finance. I will be doing MIG 4 next week. And tomorrow is our first SARD board meeting of the year, so I will have more to report at next month's meeting about that. Superintendent.
All right.
So I have to just say, everyone else makes this a really wonderful 5 minutes. I'm going to try to keep 5 minutes. A lot of the work that we're doing here is really being done by our Student Services and Special Ed Director, our Curriculum Instruction and Accountability Director, and the principals and the TOSAs. So I want to just acknowledge that people are working really hard. So as we will address later in the board agenda, the transfer of ownership of a parcel of land adjacent to Washington is finally going to be able to begin opening and continuing Washington Street. Our part of the sidewalk and some parking and some other safety improvements will allow kids to walk on a sidewalk. Each party is taking a portion of this, and it's really exciting that it's finally moving forward. We've had 3 teen nights at the Boys and Girls Club on Fridays, which have so far been a success. We surveyed students to get their input on other activities that we're going to fold into our Expanded Learning Opportunities grant program. We've been meeting with community leaders to plan this and to integrate it into other organizations, and we'll have another meeting tomorrow evening. We're doing that one by Zoom so more people can participate. And we will have a window with the Boys and Girls Club for the Dia de los Muertos altars in the Eagle Tech window. And there's a little competition, I think, or at least a walk. If it's not competitive, it's a display, and there's going to be a map. So I encourage everybody to participate in that. I think November 5th is the actual event. And our first DLAC of the year will be on November 3rd in this space. As of today, we have scheduled Narcan training on November 7th for district leadership. That means we will have Narcan available. Some districts actually become the community resource for distributing Narcan, and that's something we can talk about later. But we've ordered Narcan for all of our campuses, including GDH. We are also going to be able to provide COVID tests before the holidays. Even though testing isn't mandatory, the county is distributing kits so that people can test before they come back to school in the hope of not having a surge as we did last year after the holidays. The instructional leadership team is continuing. We are in the midst of an anti-bias training project. Each of us meets with individual coaches. We meet together and we meet with coaches. And what we've primarily been focusing on is looking at student academic progress and our history of suspension or referral data to identify patterns and develop alternatives to Fs or suspension. So intervention before referral is our goal, with an emphasis we're noticing on our Latinx boys are the ones most significantly impacted by suspension and the F rates, but other students as well. And then as of tonight, fingers crossed, our collective bargaining agreements will be settled until 24-25, so we will next sunshine in early 2024. So those are some district updates. I want to invite principals. I may ask questions or for elaboration, but these are the principals' bullets. I always say just 3 or 4, and there's so much to share. So Jefferson's PTA raised over $15,000 at their fund run. That's just, I think, unprecedented.
I've worked at many schools, and I've never had worked at a school that raise that much in, well, there's much more behind the scenes, but before, I was like, what? As I'm watching, like, I'm like, what are they doing? Counting cash and, yeah, but over $15,000 that will benefit our kids. It's awesome.
And they will have, the PTA will have its first movie night this Friday in the cafe. They also had their first walk and roll, and they had over 200 participants, so alternatives to driving school. Their first ELAC meeting had 26 participants, and they elected board officers. And they had their first PBIS monthly celebration of the year. And I welcome you to invite, if you want to invite me or invite the board, if you're doing an event like the Golden Table, it would be fun to come by and shake hands. At Washington School, grade 5 students and families had their first movie night on October 7th. They watched Brother Bear and had popcorn, sparkling water, chips, and other snacks. And this was the first event like this since the pandemic, and it was a huge success. Washington just did its fund run, I think this week, right? It's early this week, and raised over $4,000. The event was sponsored by PTSA, but Healdsburg Running Company contributed, and that was a big success. 14 Washington educators met for an elective meeting, not a required meeting, to discuss differentiated learning and ways to create learning stations in the classroom to give all students voice, choice, movement, and engagement. At the high school in JDH, they have begun a tradition called No Eagle Goes Unnoticed. It started in September, and I just happened to stop by that day and got to enjoy pizza with the students. It is an opportunity for randomly selected students to sit down with Mr. Stewart and Dr. Boyle to share insights into their experiences at the school, how to improve the climate and culture. And it's really fun to see the kids come together, have lunch together, and actually feel like their voice matters. I shared this in a community letter, but the FFA, our FFA group, had an outstanding showing at the opening and closing speech competition. It was county-wide with 9 chapters competing. Our FFA group competed and in the officer portion and received the gold ranking. And Caden McCutcheon received an award for the most outstanding reporter in that division. JH took a trip to Ukiah to meet with other big picture learning schools. And Mr. Berry took his California Modern History students to the Grace Hudson Museum, and CARE sponsored both of these trips. So thank you, CARE. Cloverdale High School teacher Wendy Connor is receiving the Jackie Hoffner Hart and Noble Award this Saturday. She will be honored at the Alexander Valley Film Impact Awards on October 22nd. So lots of good things happening. And just a quick note on enrollment. We have 7 new students in our district. The opening of the Cherry Creek Apartments has increased enrollment. They opened this fall. So Jefferson is now over 500, Washington's over 400. That's really where we saw the enrollment from Cherry Creek Apartments, I think. The high school is at 389, and JDH is at 20, which is almost capacity, essentially capacity for a big picture classroom. So we are up almost 20 from the end of 21-22, which is great news. And that's it. Any questions?
Can you clarify? I know, thank you for all the information, but Narcan, can you let us know what that is?
Sure. So Narcan is a nasally administered antidote to an opioid overdose. And there's a big push to make sure that all schools have access to Narcan. It's a very, basically, idiot-proof. They've created an idiot-proof method of delivery so that you don't have to worry about giving too much, or you don't have to inject anybody. And that way, we can provide it to students. Schools can actually distribute it to families if they know that they have a student who is engaging in risky behavior. It can be a way for us, because we get it and we can distribute it if we choose to do that. That's a separate conversation. But this, especially with the emergence of rainbow fentanyl and the risk to young younger children, this is something that we wanted to do and are finally going to do in the next month. So we placed our order for Narcan today. Our health techs are going to be trained immediately. I know at least one of them trained today, and then the rest of us will get trained on the 7th.
Just a follow-up question, if you give it to someone that doesn't need it, is there an adverse reaction to it?
No. Thank you.
L, reports discussion. Measure H update.
Good evening, everyone. I'm standing in for Kevin from Van Pelt. Couldn't be here tonight. Progress project updates. Washington School, the sunshade structure, Kelder Engineering is getting the design signed off by the architect so we can get it into DSA. It was originally scheduled for July of last summer to go to DSA, but with additional information they requested has delayed it. Kelder Engineering is also working on the final design for the Washington Street bus turnout. Awaiting a signed deed document, which Superintendent McLean touched on earlier, with the city of Cloverdale, I think is in the works. And then it could be submitted to DSA. I lost my spot, sorry. Renovation is continuing at the district office, roofing, flooring, paint, siding, basically top to bottom. The roofers are just about finished. They probably have another day and a half when they get back with all their material to get it wrapped up. And the same with the siding. I think they figured about another 3 to 4 days, because I believe we're getting some rain coming next weekend or next week. Jefferson Roof Project, they've started removing the HVAC ducting off of the library roof, and looks like they should take them about 4 or 5 days starting next week to get that thing knocked out and then get the ducting put back on. So hopefully to beat the rain if we ever get any. So originally they were hoping to be done by the 20th at Jefferson, but obviously today's the 19th, so, and the roof's not ripped off yet, so it's going to be a little bit longer than that. Southfield's DUDEC is to provide a quote for some aquatic resources study for the relocation of the drainage channels. And they're working with Kelder Engineering on the layout and drainage and so on and so forth. I think I got everything in Cliff Notes. Any questions?
No rain forecast until Friday, the week of Friday.
Sweet. So we should be dry.
Thank you.
Have we spent more on review and design on the shade structure than the shade structure's worth yet? Pretty close.
Yeah, I would think.
Yeah.
It is.
Red tape. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. L2, EL master plan update.
So just as a quick introduction, I have it right here. So one of the things is, as the board is aware, our federal program monitoring process is focusing on federal programs, and a big part of that is the ways in which we support English learners and English language development. So one of the things that we are doing is overhauling and updating our EL master plan, which hasn't been updated since, I think, 2009. And so Nicole's going to give a quick overview of it so the board understands the process, and there may be a point at which the board is asked to contribute to it. So, but we'll cross that bridge when we come to it.
Yep. Good evening, everyone. So my first presentation of the evening will be on the EL Master Plan. So I wanted to start with what is the English Learner Master Plan. It's really a plan to develop implement and evaluate our English learner programs and the services we provide, both the ones we elect to provide and those that are mandated that we provide. So initially, it's a nice way for us to really lay out our procedure. So how do we identify our English learners? How do we assess them? It's echoing a little. How do we place our students? Like, do they require a class? Are they in a special grouping for pull-out services? And then once we have students that have become proficient in English, how do we reclassify them? And so that we are then moving them to the next steps. This procedure also outlines how do we notify and involve our parents in the planning for our English learners, and how do we notify them regarding assessment, why we place their students in a program, etc. And all of this is guided by the California English Learner Roadmap and the 4 principles that it outlines. So I know these are small, but I wanted to get the entire principles on here. So principle number 1 is really looking at our assets and that our English learners provide and bring to the table, and how do we respond to those needs. So we are responsive that each of our students who are English learners have strengths, they have needs, and they have identities that they bring with us. They have a home language, they have a culture that they bring with them to the table that is a strength, and how do we use that as an asset to educate them. We need to provide support for their social emotional health and for their development. We need to value and build upon their culture, their linguistic assets that they bring, as well as provide a climate in our schools that values that and builds it into our curriculum. And this also values strong family, community, and school partnerships. For each of these principles, the roadmap provides a rubric for us to self-evaluate. So throughout this year and probably continuing to next, part of our task as a district and as school sites will be evaluating where are we in meeting the roadmap. It is a roadmap, so we are going to be going along this process and building on our current capacity so that we can provide for our English learners. Principle number 2 really focuses on instruction and how do we give meaningful access to our English learners. It starts with identification that our English learners are very intellectually rich. They need to have learning experiences that are appropriate for their age, that wraps up their cultural experiences. So for a great example, when I worked with English learners in my previous district, we had issues with some of the testing we were doing, the assessing, asking students to talk about an experience where they went skiing. None of my students had ever gone skiing. They didn't know they've never touched snow. So asking them to do a writing sample about an experience they have never seen beyond TV was not something that was appropriate for our students. So really designing our instruction and our assessment to meet those experiences, as well as to enrich their current experiences. Meaningful access so that all of our curriculum is accessible, whether our students are just learning English. So do we have Spanish curriculum to help bridge the gap while they're learning English, or another language? Here we only have Spanish speaking currently, but in many other districts they have to look at the fact they might have 20 different languages that are present and 20 different cultures beyond their English speaking students. Principle 3 is looking at the systems that we have as a district and at a site so that we know how to respond to our students as well as their communities. How do we build capacity in our teachers? And how do we have tiered supports, interventions that help that? So the systems that underlie all of these pieces so that we can build a system that will help our students become English language proficient. Principle 4 talks about alignment and articulation. So how does this go across grade levels, across school sites? How do we prepare them for college and career as they leave us? And how do we make sure that we're preparing them for reclassification? So those 4 principles are very meaty. So to begin this process, I want to make sure you know the terms that we're going to be using tonight. I'm going to keep it short, but English learner is a student whose first language is not English, and they're in the process of acquiring fluency in both social and academic English. LTEL is a long-term English language learner. For California, this is a student who's been classified as an EL for more than 6 years. So at more than 6 years, the hope is that we move them on to be reclassified. An EL that's at risk of being LTEL has been enrolled in U.S. schools for more than 3, but not more than 6, and is not showing adequate progress. They're not making gains towards being proficient. And some of the things that we use to assess that is the LPAC test. Newcomers, you may have heard this term. Newcomers are not born in the U.S., and they have been in schools for 1 full school year or less. Newcomers really are supposed to be receiving much more intensive services for year 1 and 2 so that we can help catch them up, and they are definitely going to be monitored very closely. Our TK, K, and first graders may be a newcomer, but they may not be, depending on if they were born here or not, and if they've received preschool services, etc. One of the mainstays of providing services is designated and integrated ELD. We are required to provide both to all English learners. So this is one of the mainstays moving forward with our master plan as well as FPM, is ensuring that we know what designated integrated is and that we are doing it faithfully. So integrated occurs throughout the whole day across disciplines. So all teachers would be doing integrated ELD. And they should be using the California ELD standards to help support that. Designated is really a protected time during the school day where the focus is on English language development standards. So in elementary, for example, this might be an ELD group where our ELs are pulled together with like levels. In our high school, this might be our ELD 1 level class or ELD 2 level class where students of similar levels are pulled together and they have a protected time. So this is all important because it's mandated and also it's the right thing to do, but if we look at our statistics, there's also a strong reason to really look and rebuild our plan. So 29.7% of our students are ELs. That's approximately 393 students in the district. 74 or 19% are LTELs. They've been an English learner for 6 years or longer. 59 additional students, another 15% are at risk. And to complicate matters further, we have 55 students that are both an English learner and they have special ed services with an IEP. And that's 14% of our English learners.
So is the LTLs a subset of the ELs?
Yes. Both the LTLs and the at-risk are. Some of the questions normally comes up when we look at ELs and those with IEPs is, are we over-identifying? That does cause issues in many districts that English learners tend to have more IEPs. And so that's something, as we move forward, we'll want to take a look at. That's something that every district should do. Are we over-identifying an issue that is not really related to needing special ed services, but it's a normal English language development issue? Just so that you can have a picture of the schools, 39% of students at Jefferson are English learners. 35% at Washington, 14% at the high school, and at JEH, 10%. Of the rest of our students, 17.6% are RFEP. So RFEP is students that were ELs, and they've been reclassified. They've met the state and local assessments to be said to be English proficient. We are required to track them and monitor them for 4 additional years to make sure that they're still making progress. And then if they're called proficient RFEPs, if they're more than 4 years and we no longer monitor them. But they're always still an RFEP.
What happens if a student graduates but they haven't had that 4 years? Are they followed after, or
From here, it stops with our K-12 system. So the LPAC, the summative, is the big exam that we look at English language proficiency for our ELs. And this was our overall levels last year. We had 42 students that received a level 4, which is proficient. Those 42 would then be looked at to be reclassified with our local areas of assessment, with teacher input, etc. We had 105 at level 3, 85 at level 2, and 28 at level 1. So we expect our newcomers probably to score in the level 1, for example.
This, just to make clear, this is the overall level, because my understanding of LPAC is there's 4 different sections, so their overall scores are 1, 2, 3, or 4.
Yeah, so they get an overall score of 4. The state requirement for reclassification is a 4. There are 2 sections, the oral and the written. And with that, there's speaking, listening, reading, and writing that we break it down in. So it used to be that the reclassified, they had to hit 3s or 4s in everything. Now, because it's not a straight up 1-to-1, there's a range for a 1 and a 2, and it changes as the assessment grows more validity. They can have a 4 overall and have a 2 in there under like writing and reading and a 4, and it balances out to be your overall 4. It's not a straight up nice clean cut. So what the state does is says if they have an overall 4, you can consider them. So some of our 4s do have a 2 and a 4. For comparison, and you'll see a little bit of this in my next report as well. So the SBAC is our state testing for English language arts, and our ELs that took it this past year, and that would be 3rd through 8th and 11th graders. We had only one of our English learners score and exceeded the standard, with 9 scoring the standard met, the standard being the grade level standard. So only 10 were at or above. All the rest of our English learners were nearly, or they did not meet the standard at all in English language arts. So there is a need to help move them in their English language, as well as in their mathematics scores. We had 0 4s in mathematics for our English learners. We had 11 that met the standard, and then you can see that we are very heavy in the level 1 for our English learners. So everything we do with English language is going to impact our other scores as well. So there's a great need to review what we're doing and how we're doing it, and what successes we've had previously. So our current process, coming in August, I reviewed our previous version, which was in 08 or 09. It still talked about the old CELT test, because CELT was the old LPAC. In September and October, I've been working on initial, what I would call a bridge version. It's a template from FPM. So our auditors are our reviewers, they require certain things to happen inside of our master plan. So we are trying to meet those for the review, as well as build in the other processes so we can get a more meaningful, more deeper master plan that fits us, that is not just a template. But we do have to meet the FPM deadline too. So we're currently updating it with the current structures we are using. The DLAC, one of the main goals for DLAC at any district is to actually review and approve the master plan. So we'll be bringing that in November, December to DLAC. We'll need to bring it to you for approval as well. My goal date is really January. And January, February is really to dive deeper in and do a full master plan that can delve deeper into the data and what structures can we put in place for the following year. Each year, this will come back to DLAC for approval. To help build that, and the reason why we're doing the bridge version in the middle, is right now, our district capacity of understanding the roadmap is relatively small. So we put together a 5-member team, including administrators, TOSAs, heads of EL at sites, to go to the EL Academy that's through CALSA, which is the California Association of Latin superintendents and administrators. I think I got that right. And they're putting on a 5-session roadmap training. So we are going to go as a team. It starts not this weekend, next weekend, and it ends in January. So then we can bring back to the district and help build capacity here. I'm working on a EL Thursday strand to help bring some professional development to our staff. And we're also working on embedding some into staff meetings in our PLCs. You are also be approving a purchase tonight for Elevation. Elevation is a platform that houses all of our EL data in one place. It allows our staff to look at their students all in one place. Aries houses it, but it's all scattered. This is a nice dashboard platform, and we can do all paperwork on there as well, and it houses all of our FPM requirements. We've done some other purchases and plannings that will also help with building capacity and instructing our English learners. We've purchasing Newsella. We have Writers Workshop coming back in November as well as in the spring. And we're looking at offering our GLADS trainings again in January, February. So we're trying to do a nice wraparound to hit all of those 4 pillars. I think that's the last slide. Any questions?
When the students who are reclassified, you said that we monitor them for 4 years after. What's that process, or what is the monitoring process?
Excellent. That's a great question. So usually you check in at 30 days, 60, 90, and then 1, 2, 3, 4 years. It's mandated that we cover for 4 years, and you look at grades, you look at their assessments, you look at teacher feedback. And what's nice about Elevation is we can house that all into one, and you're not doing a filing system. In past issues that had to do filing system, you have to look for all the pieces. You send out forms for recommendation for teachers. This will all be housed in Elevation. So what it does is then you have, okay, this student is not doing well. They've been reclassified a year. And then you build what kind of interventions are we going to do. So if they're at the elementary, maybe they're being pulled into an additional reading group, for example. Maybe we're assigning tutoring for them, etc. So you build intervention plans to support them because we've removed the rug or the support of the EL services.
And then for the test results, are those results pretty common with what we see every year? Because they were pretty low, or is that COVID related?
For like the LPAC?
I know you haven't been here.
So for the SBAC, I will talk about that shortly in a few minutes with the next presentation. With the LPAC, it is complicated in that with the 4s, you normally reclassify them, right? So you're removing your top cohort every year. The hope is that you continue to see more 4s because they're going to move up and progress. But they can backslide, right? You can go from a 4 and they didn't meet all the reclassification criteria, and the next year they've slid back to a 3, because that's the one mandated criteria by the state. You can't reclassify, even if everything else rose. Other questions?
What other in-house reclassification requirement is there?
Perfect question.
What does the district have?
So our second level qualification is local benchmark assessments. We use the SBAC, the CAS, but not all grade levels test at that. So we also use STAR reading. For the lower grade levels, we're just having this discussion today. We're looking at the early literacy. We're also looking at the DRAs, BPSTs. It's a combination. We're looking at the full picture. And then you have teacher recommendation that has to be based on their knowledge, not on work effort, because that often complicates grades, right, especially at the higher levels. And then the 4th is you always have to have parent consultation. So even if they met everything for reclassification, if parent says, no, I don't think they're ready, then you wouldn't reclassify. Mm-hmm. Other questions?
Thank you, Nicole. Mm-hmm. So next we have our L3 presentation regarding district SBAC test results.
That's me too.
It's a good dovetail as well.
Mm-hmm.
And while we're switching, I'll just say that I got my first look at Elevate today, and it's really awesome. Just just a very quick overview, because you see everything in one place. It's really, if you ever see it, yeah, I'm really impressed with it as a tool. It's going to make it easy for teachers to understand how their class is configured. It'll make it easier to group students and ability for, leveled groups. It makes the data very digestible.
Okay, so our next thing we're going to talk about is our SBAC, and we're going to do a preview. So, some background about CAST testing. You might have heard CAST, you might have heard SBAC. CAST is the whole suite of state testing. And this last year was the first time it was mandated since the start of the pandemic. So, in 2020, 2021, this district did choose to test the 11th graders because a lot of schools still want to see that for colleges. It's a benchmark that is being used. So you had the choice of testing or doing local benchmarks. So 11th grade was chosen to test the previous year, and then nobody else. So this is the first time all districts had to do it this last year. Okay, many chose not to at all. The previous 2 districts I was in chose not to test. The grades that are tested are 3rd through 8th and 11th grade for ELA and math, and those are the SBAC tests. 5th grade, 8th grade, and once in high school is the science test known as CAST. And there is actually a Spanish version test that they can take that's newer as well called the CSA. In schools that have many fluent speakers that are dual language or have a very strong AP Spanish program often choose to use that test as well, but it's only about 3 years old, I want to say. A couple reminders. 3rd through 5th graders, this is actually the first time they've ever taken this test. Even though it's given since 3rd grade up, because of the pandemic, 5th graders hadn't taken it at all. So just a little perspective as you move forward. It's the first time they've ever seen the test. 6th through 11th graders, it's the first time in 2 years. And remember, this is really a baseline post-COVID. This is the first time it's state test. Nobody had any idea what we would going into this. And what I'm showing you tonight is a preview. It has not been released by the state as yet, except to administrators.
I want to just pause for a second and say I thought it's been a very controversial issue this year. The state was not, they were going to embargo and keep the data. There was kind of a public rallying cry, a public records request, get the data out there, et cetera, and the state decided, okay, we are going to release it. So it felt important that the board have information on it in case it is a lightning rod or people, because it's the first time we've tested since the pandemic fully, just to make sure that you were informed before you might get questions about it.
And I'll be able to give you a preview of our tests and then give you some summary of what I've done by delving into other similar schools, not just in our county, but in Mendocino by size, etc., and show you where we're kind of at in comparison. So English Language Arts. So this is a pie. Oh, sorry. I don't want to preview. Can you cancel that for me, Bundy? I double-clicked something. There we go. So the green is level 4, and this means it exceeded grade level standards. They're above grade level. Blue is meets, yellow is nearly met, and orange is not met at all. I actually like to show you the next one because I combine the met and exceeds because these are the students that are at or above grade level, and we are in English Language Arts at 29.4%. Yellow nearly met, we're at 25.7, and orange not met at 44.9.
And this is?
This is for the English Language Arts, combined 3 through 8 and 11. Yes. So pre-pandemic, we have dropped about 6 to 8% in the meet and exceeds category. We do have some strengths, however. Our 11th grade, so if I go back for 1 second, our meet and exceeds is 29.4 overall. Our 11th graders, both this year and the previous year, where they were the only ones that tested, were 45% met or exceeds. So when we're getting to 11th grade, they are doing very well on the test. And I will say, in one of my previous districts that was heavy EL and RFEP, we saw the same thing. We saw very low scores, and then 11th grade, we had a huge pop. Like, they needed those extra years to get there. So I have seen that pattern in the past. The other real highlight in our English language arts is the students that we RFEP, that we reclassified or redesignated, 33.5% of them overall in all grades met or exceeded, and they actually outperformed our English-only students. So when we do reclassify them, they are doing very well. Some areas for growth. 75% of our ELs, remember there's a large number that are LTELs, only scored a level 1. And if we compare those directly to our English-only students, only 38%. So it was more than double our English-only students that scored a level 1 here. Our males are doing 55% compared to 34% of females that are at a level 1. So there is a gender difference here. And then when we look at our Hispanic Latino, 52% were at level 1, 33.5 non-Hispanic were at a level 1. So we have some areas for growth. They haven't really changed much since pre-pandemic. The percentages might have, but the patterns are still there. Our math, remember green and blue, I'm going to show you that combined one in a minute, are met or exceeds. And here's our combined. So for math, which we as a district generally score lower, and that is true for many districts, only 18.9% are meeting or exceeding the grade level standards district-wide. So 3rd through 8th plus 11th grade. 52.3 not met the standard at all. Some areas of strength, our elementary grades are scoring higher than our higher grades. So we're starting with a relatively good base. Our RFEP students and English-only students are performing at similar levels. So they, once they're proficient in our English, we're not seeing that differential that we saw in the ELA. But our area for growth are very similar. We're still seeing a differential in our English-only, our ELs, our Hispanic, Latino, and American Indian students are scoring much lower compared to our non-Hispanic. And then our males and females, we have a differential as well, 58 to 46. But how do we compare? Well, state hasn't released the state level numbers. So until they go live, they're not going to say, well, the state overall scored this, and this is the average state. But, and I won't share with you what districts because it is private data, regardless of where they're at starting point-wise, every one I looked at, with the exception of one, decreased 6 to 12% post-pandemic. So that's the drop that everybody was seeing in both ELA and math. So the questions for all districts and the state are going to be, well, where do we go from here? My first statement will be, it's not a this is our baseline. Okay, what interventions are we doing? How are they, do they need to look different than we did pre-pandemic? Because our kids are different, right? They went through distance learning. We have different things we're seeing in the classroom now. Some of the things we are currently doing, we're looking at what interventions we have and how successful they are. We need to relate that back to our LCAP and our district plan, because remember, this is data we use for all those. We're going to review our local benchmarks. So our STAR reading and math, we take them 3 times a year. It's going to give us more timely information to see if there's progress and growth over the year. And then on January 3rd, we have a PLC training with all our credential staff where we're going to dive deeper into how to use our data in our PLCs so that we can start looking at this data more in depth and planning where do we go from here. We're going to train in elevation so they can look at that EL data. And once again, we have Writers Workshop and GLAD training to help work on our practice and our capacity.
I want to just elaborate on the importance of the PLC piece, because that's where our teachers have an opportunity to look at data together in either grade level groups or departmentally, and there are other forms of PLCs, and talk about what the data tell us and what changes or what interventions are needed. So we're really focused on restoring the role of the PLC in taking action on instruction, on collaboration, reflection, and planning.
And it's more timely, right? It's in the moment, in that unit, in those tests and assessments they're doing, not the yearly CAPS testing. It's so you can act more quickly, you can do changes in your instruction right away, and the students are still in your classroom, right? By the time we get SBAC or LPAC tests back, the students are already moved off to someone else. Okay? If there's not any other questions, that's me.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Okay, moving on to discussion action items. M1, consideration and possible approval of the collective bargaining agreement with the California School Employees Association for the 2022-23 and 2023-24 school years.
So, as the board knows, we negotiated in August, and as of last week, CSEA ratified its contract. Patty Mills completes the AB 1200 to demonstrate that we can afford the agreement over a 3-year multi-year projection. Patty, I don't know if there's anything else you want to say about that.
Good evening, Patty Mills, CBO. No, unless you'd like an outline of the overall costs that the budget will be increased by.
It's outlined in the cover sheet, but the cost this year will be $271,232. I'm sorry, that's next year. This year it's $401,788, and then next year with the 8%, it drops a little because of some of the other. Didn't she say the statutory costs drop a little bit next year?
They do, yeah, per slightly.
So it's a smaller lump sum, but as the board knows, these are compounded costs. I mean, when you give a raise, it's ongoing. So, but for at least 3 years, we are able to afford this.
The multi-year projection shows our ending balance as being sufficient to absorb the additional increase.
Any questions from trustees?
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve M1, consideration and possible approval of collective bargaining agreement with California School Employees Association for 22-23 and 23-24 school year.
I'll second.
Trustee Axel made a motion, trustee Addison seconded, item M1 as read. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? And no one is absent. M2, consideration and possible approval of the collective bargaining agreement with the unrepresented certificated management for the 2022-23 and 2023-24 school years.
So this covers our unrepresented certificated receiving the same 10% and 8% next year. We did do salary comparisons across other unified school districts, and we're in alignment. Our salary schedule is 12 steps. Many districts only have 6 steps, but the top of the salary schedule is very similar in adjacent districts and in like Santa Rosa City Schools. It just people get there in 6 years, and ours is spread out a little longer, but the top cell is very similar. So, and this also includes a correction to one of our director's salaries that was out of alignment with we're aligning the student services and CIA director salary schedules. Per diem, that is, because they don't have the same number of days in their calendar.
Any questions from trustees?
No questions.
approve the collective bargaining agreement with the unrepresented certificated management for the 22-23 and 23-24 school year.
I'll second.
Trustee Lucas White, motion, trustee Addison seconded, and two as read. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? And no one is absent. And 3, consideration and possible approval of the collective bargaining agreement with the unrepresented classified management staff for the 2022-23 and 2023-24 school years.
So once again, these are classified, unrepresented managers, the CBO, MOT director, tech director, food service, and the executive assistant, receiving the same 10% and 8%.
Any questions from trustees?
Move to approve.
A second. Trustee Addison motion, trustee Lucas White seconded, and 3, consideration and possible approval of collective bargaining agreement with the unrepresented classified management staff for the 2022-23 and 2023-24 years. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? And no one is absent. And 4, consideration and possible approval of resolution 223-06, adopting a conflict of interest code.
This is something that the board does every 2 years, reviews it, it's revised. We receive a model, don't we? We get a recommendation. And thank you, trustee Mendoza, for catching an omission that we corrected. So I'm sure, many trustees have seen this before, but we're basing this on the recommended updated resolution.
Any questions from trustees?
Move to approve.
I'll second.
Trustee Addison motion, trustee Axel seconded, and 4, consideration and possible approval of resolution 22306, adopting conflict of interest code. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? And no one is absent.
Just to clarify, the question, sorry, I should have done this beforehand. But just to clarify to everybody, the question of adding on the back part the designated positions of who would be affected by a Form 700, it's just the addition of the principals and assistant principals and deans of students that are normally added, but in the original document was not included. So it will happen. Thank you.
Thank you. And 5, consideration and possible approval of the resolution 22307, approving the purchase of real property from the city of Cloverdale for traffic improvement.
What can I say? The moment has finally come.
Been a long time.
We are purchasing, the city council approved this last Wednesday. The next step is for the board to act on it. And then the transfer of title will take place. And then we can proceed with DSA approval or review. And we can begin to do our portion of the work to open Washington Street and create sidewalks and safe routes to school around the Washington campus.
And we haven't been able to move forward because we don't have the deed. So we've been kind of in a holding pattern, going back and forth with the city for a while. It's nice to have it done.
So once this happens, and we do our portion of the Sherman Mountain, the sidewalks, and all of that kind of stuff, how long before the street actually goes all the way through? Is that our responsibility or that's the city's responsibility? So
It's
we'll
a
do our
combination.
okay.
So there's several different agencies involved. The city, Alexander Valley Healthcare, has a portion on their side where they'll be developing the lot that will be the healthcare center, and the city. And in all likelihood, we expect that the city will purchase a segment of Washington Street in front of kind of the circular driveway across from the Citrus Fair. There's a wedge of the actual street that we own, that the city would like to own, but we have to treat them as separate transactions. And this was the most urgent so that we could move forward with construction. DSA won't review anything for us until we actually own the land. So it's been, yeah.
And this has been being worked on for years.
Yeah.
I think the health centers have been working on it for 9 years. Is that what it was?
Yeah.
But this has been going on for years and years and years. It's a collaboration between the city, the school district, the healthcare district. It's taken a lot of time to get here. It's kind of like a shade structure. But it's gonna completely transform the front of Washington. There'll be a spot for the bus to pull out and drop kids off. There'll be a spot for parents to drop kids off. There'll be a little bit of additional parking. It's gonna really change the flow there.
And there won't be as much of a traffic congestion. And Citrus Fair, you won't have to drive over speed bumps on Citrus Fair, except if you absolutely have to go there. There will be an alternative way out. And so you asked a question about timeline, and I wanted to say that the Alexander Valley Healthcare construction, that timeline, I think they just closed escrow, 6 weeks ago, finally. And so we will do our portion, but the full opening of the street may take some time because they have to do their portion.
Will it be a one-way street or both ways?
Two.
Both ways, two ways. Okay.
It's an extension of Washington Street. We'll go all the way through to Healdsburg Avenue, two-way road, sidewalks, parallel parking, bike lanes, bus turnouts, all that. It'll be a modern road.
And not to mention the students that cut across that field
Yeah.
will have a sidewalk to walk on. So
Yeah. They won't be
mud in
just
the rain or.
a muddy lot to walk through. And it'll take them off the main thoroughfare of Citrus Fair.
I'll make a motion to approve M5 as read.
I'll second.
There was a motion by trustee Axel, a second by trustee Addison on M5, approval of resolution 22307, approving the purchase of real property from the city of Philadelphia for traffic improvement. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? And no one is absent. So future agenda items.
May we add copy checks onto our future agenda items?
Actually have that written down on mine. I know that I had asked. Well, I know that Kathleen asked for it. I wasn't going to put it as a future agenda item, but I just wanted to
Just needs to get scheduled.
get scheduled. But also there was discussion to not only continue them how they were in the past with meeting at each site with rotation, but also possibly opening it up to having meet with the community as well. And staff can come to that. Or
Does that need to be
on
an agenda for us to discuss it?
Doesn't need to be.
I don't think so. We already had the practices.
So I think it's just scheduling, getting it scheduled, finding times to do that.
Would you like to discuss it, or is it that you want to make sure we do it?
No, I would like us to do it, or resume, since we are in October.
So we will make sure those get scheduled within the next week. Okay?
Anything else? I know we talked about this, Alexander Valley Healthcare student concerns. Did we ever find out more information?
I had a brief conversation with Debbie about some collaboration, but she and I need to meet and kind of figure out what it will look like and what an agenda is like.
Anything else? Trustees? To add as a future agenda? Okay, our next meeting is scheduled for November 15th, with a regular board meeting time at 6 p.m.
I'll move to adjourn the meeting.
Trustee Mendoza for resolution, trustee Addison seconded to adjourn at 7:37 p.m. Thank you for those who stayed and joined us via live streaming. Oh, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? No one here.